2018, Ghana's appeal as the preferred investment destination has grown significantly, and we have attracted global industry giants such as Volkswagen, Nissan, and Siemens to establish local assembly plants. Mr. Speaker, and Sinotrack. Mr. Speaker, our policies have improved the business environment, and the private sector has responded by increasing jobs. Based on SNIT data, the private sector added 208,624 more jobs in the first 10 months of 2018, an increase on the 197,000 former jobs registered in 2017. We have resourced Ghana's Fiscal Service and the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations to develop a more robust system to track employment on a quarterly basis. Government is also doing its part on job creation. Over the period 2017 and 2018, the Ministry of Finance granted financial clearance to various agencies to recruit 88,719 Ghanaians into critical sectors of agriculture, health, and education to enable us to improve service delivery, including 20,000 in the forestry sector. In addition, the Nation Builders Corps, a 3-year transitional job opportunity for young graduates, has enrolled, Mr. Speaker, 100,000 young graduates to support the delivery of critical public services. Mr. Speaker, this is unprecedented in our nation's 50-year history. Mr. Speaker, it is a monumental achievement as it is the single largest job and skill development program in the last 50 years in our dear country. The testimonies from the beneficiaries and their families have reaffirmed government's commitment to transform our society. Mr. Speaker, in recent times, the MPP government has twice had to inherit an IMF program from our friends across the aisle, which we have successfully completed. Notwithstanding exiting the current program after successful completion, we will continue with our prudent management of the economy and buttress that with legal and institutional measures to ensure irreversibility of the gains made so far. However, as a member country in good standing, we will continue our productive policy and technical collaboration with the IMF. Mr. Speaker, Ghana looks forward with renewed confidence. This seminal 2019 budget, which comes at the midterm of President Akufo-Addo's administration, aims to consolidate the gains from tough reform measures taken so far and surge boldly forward in growing our economy, especially as we successfully exit the ECF program with the IMF, our trusted advisors in the past 3 years. Under the ECF program, we jointly made some difficult decisions which have enabled us to improve our macroeconomic situation. Mr. Speaker, we would like to acknowledge the role and contribution of the IMF in our achievements in macroeconomic stabilization and growth. As a member of the IMF, Ghana will continue to engage through Article 4 consultations and other arrangements even after that. As we complete and exit the program in December 2018, we are also instituting measures to ensure irreversibility of the macroeconomic gains we have made. Consequently, we will, among other things, legislate a fiscal responsibility role to cap the fiscal deficit to no more than 5% of GDP as part of measures to promote budget credibility and fiscal sustainability. A fiscal council will also be established. We will strictly enforce the PFM Act to promote efficient and effective public financial management. We will continue with the zero bank financing arrangement of the BOG to curb fiscal dominance as part of measures to rein in on inflation. We will maximize domestic resource mobilization and increase tax revenue to GDP ratio to levels in line with our peer lower middle income countries. We will implement expenditure efficiency and rationalization measures to increase efficiency in public spending and free more fiscal space for growth-oriented and job-creating programs. We shall enforce the Public Procurement Act and ensure sole sourcing is minimized to promote competition and efficiency in public spending, thereby promoting value for money, and institute, Mr. Speaker, risk management framework to mitigate macro-fiscal risks. In view of this, a fiscal risk unit has been established at the Ministry of Finance. God has demonstrated countless times that he can use ordinary people, ordinary nations to do extraordinary things. Ghana has a history replete with extraordinary achievements nationally, regionally, internationally. These achievements were the results and culmination of right choices. A confident nation beckons, Mr. Speaker. Having set the tone for this budget, in accordance with the Public Financial Management Act, I'll proceed to provide details of government's plans for 2019, focusing on recent global macroeconomic developments and the implications for Ghana, Ghana's macroeconomic performance in 2018, and our targets for 2019 and the medium term, and sectorial performance, government's key programs and policy initiatives, and the consequent deliverables. Mr. Speaker, global economic developments and outlook. Mr. Speaker, according to the IMF's October 2018 World Economic Outlook, global growth momentum moderated in the first half of 2018 compared to the same period in 2017. This reflected greater than expected moderation of activity in some advanced economies, particularly in the Euro area and United Kingdom. Global growth is projected to be maintained at 3.7% in 2018 and 2019, same as in 2017. Growth in advanced economies is expected to increase very marginally from 2.3% in 2017 to 2.4% in 2018, largely on the back of strong growth in the U.S. economy, which benefited from sizable fiscal stimulus. Growth in emerging markets and developing economies was steady in the first half of 2018, supported by continued stronger growth in emerging Asia, despite the moderation of activity in China. Growth in the emerging markets and developing economies is projected to remain steady at 4.7% in 2019, same as in 2018 and 2017. In sub-Saharan Africa, growth is expected to increase from 2.7% in 2017 to 3.1% in 2018 and further to 3.8% in 2019, boosted by oil exporting economies which benefited from higher oil prices. Inflation. Mr. Speaker, global inflation increased in the second quarter of 2018, largely reflecting higher energy prices. Core inflation, excluding food and energy, remains below target in most advanced economies, while in emerging markets and developed economies, core inflation has inched up in recent months. Commodity prices. Mr. Speaker, commodity prices generally continued to strengthen in the mid-quarter of 2018. Oil prices increased to about $76 a barrel in the first half of 2018, the highest since November 2014, but declined to about $71 in October 2018, following increased oil production by the major exporters. Mr. Speaker, the world market price of cocoa beans is estimated to reach $2,200 per metric ton in 2018, compared to $2,025 in 2017. Gold prices are also projected to increase from $1,293 per ounce in 2017 to an average of $1,346 per ounce in 2018, before falling slightly to $1,302 in 2019. Financial conditions. Mr. Speaker, the monetary policy normalization in the U.S. led to a stronger U.S. dollar and rising yields on U.S. Treasuries, resulting in tighter financial conditions and capital flow reversals in a number of emerging markets and frontier economies, including Ghana. Despite these developments, global financial conditions remain generally supportive of growth. Domestic macroeconomic performance. Mr. Speaker, the performance of the economy for the first 9 months has been impressive. To properly assess the performance, let me first restate the macroeconomic targets set for 2018 as presented in the 2018 budget. Overall, real GDP growth rate of 6.8%, 5.6% in the rebase series, non-oil growth rate of 5.4%, 5.8% in the rebase series, end period inflation of 8.9%, fiscal deficit of 4.5% of GDP, 3.7% in the rebase series, primary surplus of 1.7% of GDP, 1.4% in the rebase series, and gross international reserves to cover not less than 3.5 months of imports of goods and services. Mr. Speaker, data as they end September 2018 shows that the economy is in good shape and we are on track to meet our targets. Real GDP grew by 5.4% using the rebase series, 6.8% in the first quarter. In the first half of 2018, compared to the annual target of 5.6%. Non-oil GDP grew by 4.6% compared to the 2018 target of 5.8%. End-year inflation rate declined from 11.8% at the end of 2017 to 9.8% at the end of September 2018, and further, Mr. Speaker, to 9.5% as at October 2018. The fiscal deficit was 3% of rebased GDP at the end of September 2018, compared to a target of 2.7%. The primary balance was a surplus of 0.5% of rebased GDP, compared to a target of 0.9% of rebased GDP for the period. The public debt, including the financial sector bailout costs, at the end of September 2018 was 57.4% of rebased GDP, excluding bailout costs. The debt was 53.9% of rebased GDP. As of September 2018, the monetary policy rate dropped from 20% at the end of 2017 to 17% at the end of October 2018. The provisional trade balance for the period recorded a surplus of 1.6 billion compared to a surplus of 777 million recorded for the same period in 2017. Gross international reserves accumulated to 6.7 billion, sufficient to cover 3.6 months of imports ahead of a 2018 target of 3.4 months. The exchange rate, which appreciated against the dollar up to May 2018, depreciated by 7.5% at the end of September 2018, largely on account of external pressures, including the strengthening of the US dollar, the US-China trade war, and the US Fed policy rate hikes. Compared to other emerging economies, Ghana has been able to weather the storm a lot better, primarily due to strong economic fundamentals. Mr. Speaker, the detailed performance in the real monetary, external, and fiscal sector of the economy is provided below. Mr. Speaker, the 2018 budget envisaged a 6.8% GDP growth rate. However, with the rebasing of the GDP, there has been the need to revise the 2018 growth projection. Thus, the overall GDP growth target has been revised to 5.6%, taking account of the base effect of the GDP rebasing and half-year performance. Non-oil GDP is projected to grow by 5.8%. Mr. Speaker, provisional estimates by the Ghana Statistical Service show that economic growth remains strong in 2018. Real GDP grew by 5.4% during the first half of 2018, then oil by 4.4% and 4.3% in the first and second quarters of 2018, respectively. Monetary aggregates and credit development. Mr. Speaker, broad money supply, including foreign currency deposit M2+, grew by 24.1% year-on-year at end September 2018, compared with 23.1% over the same period in 2017. The pace of expansion in banks' total outstanding credit increased in the 12-month period to September 2018. Total outstanding credit increased by 13%, 4.7 billion, compared to 7.9%, 2.6 billion in 2017. Most of the credit to the private sector was absorbed by the commerce and finance, services, transport and storage, communication, and manufacturing subsectors. Mr. Speaker, money market interest rates generally trended downwards in 2018, reflecting the reduction in the monetary policy rate and general improvements in macroeconomic fundamentals. However, the 91-day Treasury bill rate increased to 13.37% in September from 12.8% a year ago, while the one-year note firmed up to 18% in September 2018. And lending rates of the deposit money banks also went down generally. Mr. Speaker, the Ghanaian cedi came under pressure in the second quarter of 2018 following the strengthening of the US dollar in international markets. These developments resulted in tighter financing conditions and capital flow reversals in a number of emerging markets and frontier economies, including Ghana. Domestic demand pressures for foreign exchange, as well as speculative trading, were also contributory factors. Mr. Speaker, the cedi, however, stabilized in the third quarter, benefiting from positive sentiments on the market as a result of the cocoa syndicated loan and Bank of Ghana's competent management of our resources. Mr. Speaker, these external sector developments resulted in a drawdown of the country's gross international reserves by $798 million to $6.8 billion at the end of September 2018. This was sufficient to provide for 3.6 months of interest cover compared to 3.9 months of cover in December 2017. Fiscal developments. Mr. Speaker, our overarching fiscal policy objective over the past 2 years has been to consolidate our public finances as a surer path to a declining debt burden. With this in mind, the 2018 budget set the overall fiscal balance as the primary anchor and targeted a reduction in the fiscal deficit from 4.8% of rebased GDP, 5.9% of old GDP in 2017 to 3.7% of rebased GDP, 4.5% of old GDP in 2018. At the same time, the fiscal framework was calibrated to yield a larger primary surplus relative to the 2017 outturn and ultimately lower the rate of debt accumulation. Mr. Speaker, to safeguard our fiscal policy objective for 2018, government presented a package of revenue measures to this August House during the mid-year fiscal review of the 2018 budget statement and economic policy. These measures took into consideration the need, first, to improve the sluggish revenue performance of the first 5 months of the year, and second, to address the low non-oil tax-to-GDP ratio as compared to peer middle-income economies. Specifically, GET Fund and NHIL were decoupled from the input-output VAT mechanism and converted into straight levies, with rates remaining at 2.5% each. A luxury vehicle levy was introduced and an additional personal income tax band of income in excess of 10,000 Ghana cedis with a 35% tax rate. Mr. Speaker, provisional data on government fiscal operations from January to December 2018 indicates that domestic revenues grew by 15.9% on an annual basis and reached 31.7 billion, compared to 27.3 billion during the same period in 2017. However, total revenue and grants was 9.5% below target. On the other hand, expenditures were generally lower than programmed, although some overruns were observed on specific expenditure lines, including use of goods and services and wages and salaries. These operations resulted in a fiscal deficit of 3% of rebased GDP compared to a deficit target of 2.6% of rebased GDP for the 9 months. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal deficit was financed from both domestic and external sources and included a drawdown in government deposits with the Bank of Ghana. Total domestic financing amounted to 4.2 billion, of which net financing from the domestic market operations amounted to 6.5 billion. Total net foreign financing amounted to 4.9 billion and included inflows from the issuance of the 2018 Eurobond. Mr. Speaker, the primary balance recorded a surplus of 1.5 billion, or 0.5% of rebased GDP, albeit lower than the target of 2.8%, 0.9% of rebased GDP. Petroleum receipts. Mr. Speaker, government receipts from crude oil liftings for the first 9 months of 2018 from Jubilee, TEN, and Sankofa fields amounted to 604 million. Mr. Speaker, out of petroleum receipts of 723.55 million, GMPC, the NOC, was allocated a total of $223.43 million US dollars, comprising equity financing costs of $149.72 million US dollars, and its share of the net carried and participating interest of $73.71 million. The ABFA received a total of $176.33 million, while the GPFs received $323.79 million. Mr. Speaker, the nominal public debt stock at the end 2018 was $170.8 billion, comprising external and domestic debt of $86.6 billion and $84.1 billion, respectively. The overall rate of debt accumulation in 2018 is 19.8%, driven primarily by the cost of the cleanup of the financial sector involving resolution of 7 defined banks. The rate of debt accumulation would have been 11.5%, the lowest in 10 years without the cleanup exercise. Mr. Speaker, public debt, including financial sector bailouts, as a percentage of GDP stood at 70.7% at the end of September, compared to 69.2% during the same period in 2017. The public debt, Mr. Speaker, however, excluding the financial sector cleanup, as a ratio of GDP, is 66.5%. In terms of the rebased GDP, the public debt to GDP is 57.2% and 53.9% excluding cleanup costs. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, we continue the cleanup of a heavily indebted energy sector. Following the establishment of the ESLA bond program in 2017, government has steadily settled over 5 billion cedis in legacy debt and age payables towards the goal of a financially viable and competitive power sector. An audit exercise is currently underway to validate the age payables that were not considered under the ESLA bond program. Once confirmed, government will intervene with a combination of cash and bonds to pay off the valid debts. This measure will improve the liquidity position of the energy sector SOEs and ensure long-term financial viability. Mr. Speaker, a total amount of 3.5 billion was programmed to be collected in energy sector levies in 2018. At the end of September 2018, an amount of 2.3 billion was collected and lodged into the established and other ESLA accounts. Mr. Speaker, from January to August 2018, a retap on the 10-year ESLA bond was effected of 615 million Ghana cedis and 264 million respectively, bringing the total value of ESLA bonds issued to 5.8 billion. Energy sector SOE debts amounting to approximately 5.6 billion have been settled to date from these proceeds. Partial securitization of mineral royalties. The 2018 budget announced government policy of securitizing future mineral royalties to support current developmental needs. In September, Parliament passed the Minerals Income Investment Fund Bill into law. The objective is to hold and manage the equity interests of government in mining companies and receive mineral royalties and rents due government. Accordingly, the fund will set up an SPV to raise funds by way of initial public offering through a dual listing on the Ghana and London stock exchanges. Government expects to raise up to $750 million from the IPO. The transaction advisors for the IPO have begun work in earnest. Mr. Speaker, I turn now to the medium-term macroeconomic targets. Following our significant achievements in stabilizing the economy, government will continue to pursue prudent macroeconomic policies to provide a stable environment for expanding economic opportunities and for promoting inclusive and job-creating growth and development. Mr. Speaker, consistent with the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921, we will pursue our growth objective without compromising fiscal consolidation. We will reduce the fiscal deficit to make the overall debt burden sustainable. We will pursue prudent monetary and external sector policies to keep inflation under control and achieve sector policies for favorable current account balance to underpin exchange rate stability. Mr. Speaker, we have set the following medium-term 2019-2022 macroeconomic targets consistent with our objectives. Overall real GDP to grow at an average of 7%, non-oil real GDP to grow at an average of 6.6%, inflation to be within the target band of 8 plus or minus 2%, overall fiscal deficit to remain within the fiscal rule of under 5% of GDP, the primary balance to be a surplus of at least 1% of GDP, and gross international reserve to cover at least 4 months of imports of goods and services. Mr. Speaker, based on the overall macroeconomic objective of sustaining and restoring macroeconomic stability and pursuing inclusive growth and job-creating programs, the following targets have been set for the 2019 fiscal year. Overall real GDP growth of 7.6%. Non-oil real GDP growth of 6.2%. End-period inflation of 8%. Fiscal deficit of 4.2% of GDP. Primary surplus of 1.2% of GDP. And gross international reserves to cover not less than 3.5 months of imports covered. Mr. Speaker, we now provide details of the medium-term outlook for the real, fiscal, monetary, and external sectors of the economy. The real sector. Overall GDP is projected to grow by 7.6% in 2019, while non-oil GDP is projected to grow at 6.2%. In terms of sectorial growth, the agricultural sector is expected to grow by 7.3%, the industry sector 9.7%, and the services sector 6.1%. Mr. Speaker, to bolster our resolve to maintain fiscal discipline, government will soon submit a bill to this August House with the main objective of ensuring that the fiscal deficit is capped at 5% of GDP. Additionally, government will institute a fiscal council to further strengthen fiscal management. Resource mobilization for 2019. Mr. Speaker, total revenue and grants for 2019 is estimated at 58.9 billion, 17.1% of the rebased GDP, up from a projected outturn of 46.8 billion, 15.7% of rebased GDP. Domestic revenue is estimated at 57.8 billion, representing an annual growth of 25.5% over the projected outturn for 2018. Of this amount, non-oil tax revenue will constitute about 74.2% of domestic revenue and amount to 42.9 billion Ghana cedis. This estimate reflects the impact of expected improvements in tax compliance and reforms in revenue administration. Non-tax revenue, excluding oil, will amount to 6.5 billion, 1.9% of GDP in 2019, equivalent to 11.3% of total domestic revenue. Of this amount, 4.4 billion is expected to be retained by institutions as internally generated funds. In addition, as a result of the IGF capping, an amount of 282.2 million is expected to be paid into the consolidated fund. Receipts from upstream petroleum activities are projected at 5.4 billion in 2019, equivalent to 1.6% of GDP and representing 30.3% over the projected outturn for 2018. Grant disbursement from development partners are estimated at 1.1 billion, up from the projected outturn of 773.2 million Ghana cedis in 2018. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure, including clearance of arrears, is estimated at 73.4 billion, equivalent to 21.3% of GDP, representing a growth of 27% above the projected outturn for 2018. Expenditure on wages and salaries is forecasted at 19.4 billion, representing about 26.5% of total expenditure. The wage bill is anticipated to reduce to 5.6% of GDP from 5.9% projected outturn for 2018. Expenditure on goods and services is projected at 6.3 billion, representing 1.8% of GDP. The annual growth of 38.8% reflects a full provision made to cater for the government's priority programs, including the flagship free SHS policy. A total amount of 18.6 billion has been estimated for interest payments of public debt. Of this amount, domestic interest payments will constitute about 77.8% and amount to 14.5 billion Ghana cedis. Government in 2019 will continue to implement the Earmark Funds Capping and Realignment Act 2017, Act 947, to reduce budget rigidities and create fiscal space to fund growth-enhancing expenditures. In this regard, transfers to statutory funds as well as all other earmark funds are estimated at 13.8 billion, equivalent to 4% of GDP compared to 3.5% in 2018. Capital expenditure is projected at 8.5 billion, equivalent to 2.5% of GDP, and a growth of 55.7% over the 2018 projected outturn. Of this amount, domestically financed capital expenditure is estimated at 3.2 billion, or 0.9% of GDP. An amount of 5.3 billion has been budgeted for foreign finance capital expenditure, and this will be funded by a combination of project grants and loans. Mr. Speaker, based on the estimates for total revenue and grants and total expenditure, the 2019 fiscal operations will result in an overall budget deficit of 14.5 billion, equivalent to 4.2% of GDP. Financing of the fiscal deficit will be from both domestic and foreign sources. Net foreign financing will amount to $9.7 billion, including a planned sovereign bond issuance of $9.6 billion. Total domestic financing is estimated at $4.8 billion. This will result in primary surplus of 1.2% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, the benchmark crude oil price for 2019 has been projected at $66.76 per barrel, in line with the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, Amendment 2015 PRMA Act 893. The gas price for 2019 is also projected at $3.99 per million BTUs. The 2019 benchmark revenue crude oil output is 63.4 million barrels, 173,764 barrels of oil per day. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry is proposing to this August House to allow it to exclude gas revenues to the tune of $181.80 million from the projected revenues for 2019, as we devise ways of getting VRA to pay for the gas supplied by Ghana Gas. Furthermore, as a measure to minimize the amount of gas produced in the SGN field for power production, government has decided to postpone the extraction of its share of the gas resources, royalties, and carried and participating interest until such a time that we line up off-takers to consume the gas in here. These are prudential measures and should not be misconstrued to mean that the Ministry will not be pursuing the VRA's gas bills as required by the PRMA. Mr. Speaker, if this House grants us this request, the projected petroleum revenue for 2019 will amount to $1.1 billion. This is made up of royalties of $227.1 million, carried and participating interest of $602.8 million, carried income tax $249.6 million, and surface rentals of $1.1 million. Of this amount, $404.9 million will be ceded to the NOC for its equity financing costs, $320.1 million, and share of the net carried and participating interest, $84.8 million. $473 million allocated to the ABFA, while the GPFs receive $202.7 million. The GPF's receipts will be distributed between the Ghana Stabilization Fund and the Ghana Heritage Fund. Mr. Speaker, consistent with His Excellency the President's vision of transforming the Ghanaian economy, creating prosperity and job opportunities for all, and moving us to a Ghana beyond aid in 2017 and 2018, we launched a number of flagship programs that have yielded significant results. In 2019, government will consolidate and build on these programs. Mr. Speaker, rather than the traditional presentation of sectorial performance and outlook, the rest of my presentation is organized so as to highlight the key pillars of our 2019 budget, which takes bold and fundamental steps towards the President's vision. Mr. Speaker, the budget statement economic policy for the 2019 financial year provides a detailed account of sectorial performance in 2018 and outlook for 2019. Here, I focus on 6 strategic pillars that build on the flagship programs and achievements of the past 2 years. Mr. Speaker, the strategic pillars of the 2019 budget are infrastructure, agriculture modernization, industrialization, entrepreneurship, improving efficiency in revenue mobilization and protecting the public purse, and social interventions. Infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, infrastructure, both hard and soft, is the backbone of economic development and growth, as well as a source of jobs and wealth for a majority of people. In a rapidly changing global marketplace, traditional infrastructure like electricity and power, transport and logistics, water and sanitation, roads, highways, and railways have combined with new, mostly soft infrastructure like digitization of government services to enable emerging economies like ours leapfrog the development path to prosperity. Mr. Speaker, this government is committed to embarking on an integrated infrastructure development program across the country that will move goods, food items, and people from one location to another. That will create jobs and prosperity and ensure value for money for Ghana, as well as position Ghana as a transportation, energy, petroleum, logistics, financial services hub in the region. Mr. Speaker, to ensure efficient management of infrastructure, we'll soon submit a bill to set up the Ghana Asset Management Corporation. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I'd like to inform Ghanaians on what we have done so far on infrastructure and the massive investments commencing in 2019. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, we will invest massively in the development of roads and infrastructure from a variety of funding sources. And the following projects have been identified to commence in 2019. Ashanti region. Ahia Kwanta Obuasi. Datano Ahokwa Suhenso. Ninahe Awisesu. Ninahe Chechere. Okonkwa Noche Ebuakwa. Swami Interchange. Ofori Atta Interchange. Banshia Submetro. Swami Submetro. Tafo Prakrano Submetro. Asokwa Submetro. Kwada So Submetro. Ofori Chrome Subin Submetro. Inshiaso Bantama Mampong Inner City Roads. Brown Ahapo. Brown Ahapo. Atebobo. Atebobo Kwame Danso Kojo Chrome. Sunyane Inner Ring Road. Sunyane Inner City Roads. Tepa Boamayamfo. Brekum Inner City Roads. Duaya Nkwanta, Odumase Sekwa Nkwanta, Bediako Kasapi Camp 15, Kwaben Abomosu Eswam, Eastern Region, Kwaben Ekropon, New Abrem Ofuase Akemodan, Achem Ankasa Town Roads, Achem Fremponso, Mampon Kofiase, Yumian Kwanta Obuase, Kasekrom Adembra, Koforidua Interchange, Akroso Asaman Kese, Western Region, Christia Inner City Roads, Benchima Adwafia, Asankrabwa Agona Sefia Bukwai, Central Region, Awakrom Amisano, Chefo Praso, Esikuma, Dunkwa Ofe, Akotoche Road, Amamamo Area Roads, Ampura New Community Area, Western Region, Cape Coast Polytechnic Road, Apausika Roads and Links, Agona Swedro Inner City Roads, and Kamu Achiasi Swedro, Swedro Borgiase Adeso, other selected Cape Coast Inner City Roads, Northern Region, Tamale Interchange, Nalarego Bumprugu Road, Tamale Salaga Bimbila, Yendi Tatale, Karaga Kushegu, Wulego Pasenkwa, Upper West, Laura Hantumu, Laura Dekpe Bridge, Tutulege Sandama, we are say Upper East, Navrango Naga Upper East, Volta, Jessica Dodo Pepese in Quanta, Have Hohoi Inner City Roads, Accra City Roads, Taifa, Burkina, Nkatia, Bega Dome, Babenya Mosque, Crystal Asapu Area Roads, Taifa, Pure Water Roads and Links, Babenya, Farm Milk Road, Anya, Edujamfi Road, Selected Roads in Anya, Apostle Safu Onyinansi Road, Pentecost University Road, Omanjo to Olebu, Abiesi Road to Ablekuma.
Order.
Aland Area Road to Soutum, Racecourse Medical Center Road, Selected Roads in Bawe, Nana Krom Santoa Sherman Roads, Adenta Dodoa Road, Opanko Hospital Link Road, Abensu Piama Taxi Road, Israel Junction, Sound Foundation, Blue Gate, Eyabua Street, Nia Kraman, Trobu Amasamai. Partial construction of North Ofanko, Jonte Bypass. Partial construction of Yellow House and Links, Trobu Amasaman. Partial construction of Asafo, Amamoli Road and Links, Trobu Amasaman. Poultry Farm Road, Trobu Amasaman. Drainage construction, Confidence and Veterinary, South Ofanko. Demo Road, Lejekuku. Alo Wato Malik Road, Lejekuku. Baptist School area, Sea Lady Road, Teshinov Bypass Road, and Gibada Office Complex. Mr. Speaker, in line with our commitment to complete roads projects commenced under the previous administration, the following ongoing projects will also be financed. Bridge on the Volta River at
Order.
Bridge on the Volta River at Bolivo. In Sawam, Apeja Road. Bogatangwa, Boku, Makom. In Kwanta, Otidamango. Otidamango, Napanduri. Brekum to Siaka Road. Inchi to the Diaso. Dualization of whole main roads, whole bypass, Kumasi roads, and drainage extension project. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the above, in 2019, government in partnership with the private sector through PPP arrangements will undertake various projects including the Accra-Takoradi Highway dualization, the Accra-Tema Motorway and Accra-Kumasi Highway dualization. Mr. Speaker, now let me turn my attention to the development of the railway infrastructure. Government in 2018 commenced the rehabilitation of the existing 56-kilometer narrow gauge line from Kojo Krom to Takwa through Insuta corridor to restore passenger rail and freight services for the first time since 2007. This will be completed in 2019. Mr. Speaker, work also commenced on rehabilitation works on the 70-kilometer narrow gauge sections of the Eastern Railway line from Accra to Nsawam and Accra to Tema. The Achimota to Tema section is 90% complete, and Achimota to Accra Central and Achimota to Nsawam will be completed by end of 2018. Rehabilitation will continue to Kofodua in 2019. Mr. Speaker, The feasibility studies for the proposed 596-kilometer greenfield railway line from Kumasi to Paka, popularly known as the Central Spine, has been undertaken. Phase 1 from Kumasi to Buepe section will commence in 2019. Mr. Speaker, the following feasibility studies commence and will be pursued in 2019. Rail link on a BOT basis between the Tema Port and Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. Development of metro light rail transit system in Accra and Kumasi, such as the recently signed Accra SkyTrain project. Trans-ECOWAS line from Aflawo through Cape Coast to Elubo, and redevelopment of the central line from Kotoku in Greater Accra region to Huni Valley in the Western region. Mr. Speaker, the railway location workshop also at Esikado is being modernized and equipped and will be completed in 2019 to become a one-stop workshop to serve the railway, mining, petroleum, and agriculture industries. We are confident, Mr. Speaker, that 2019 will relaunch the railway system in Ghana after some 50 years of inactivity. Mr. Speaker, we intend to put $1 billion behind this project. Mr. Speaker, it is of major concern to government that in this day and age of many of our people do not have access to potable water. As such, under the Water for All agenda, we will ensure the continuous expansion of urban water systems in the country, systems to be expanded in 2019 and over the medium term include the Pond Water Supply Expansion Project, Phase 2, Aqua Africa Water Project, Yendi Water Project, Damangu Water Project, Wenchi Techiman Water Project, Tamale Water Supply Expansion Project, Sunyani Water Project, Sekendi Takrade, and the Siama Water Projects. In 2019, government will lay 190 kilometers of pipeline across the country. We'll also construct 9 water systems, each in the northern and central regions, 5 in Brong-Ahafo region, and 2 in Upper West region. Additionally, government will construct 12 fully reticulated small town pipe systems and 6 limited mechanized systems in the Volta region. Mr. Speaker, as part of the overall strategy to position Ghana as a transport and logistics hub, government continued to develop the port infrastructure through the construction of new container terminals at the Tema Port to increase container handling capacity, provide additional berths, reduce waiting time, and ensure quick access to the port. The first berth, with a depth weight capacity of 16 meters, is 42% complete and is scheduled to be operational by 2019. Mr. Speaker, to develop the Takoradi Port as an oil and gas hub, government commenced the development and operation of an on-dock container multi-purpose terminal with a container quay of 16-meter draft to accommodate bigger vessels. The first phase of the dry bulk jetty, which involves the construction of the 600-meter quay wall, was completed. The second phase of an additional 200-meter quay wall will commence in 2019. Government also facilitated the construction of the Anloga fish landing site to enhance the productivity of fishers. In addition, detailed construction designs and environmental impact assessment studies were completed for landing sites at Teshi, Axim, Winneba, Manford, and a fishing harbor complex at Jamestown. Actual construction on these landing sites, as well as the Phase 2 of the Anomabo Fisheries College, will commence in 2019. Government has completed the first phase of the Almena Fishing Port Rehabilitation and Expansion Project, which includes upgrading the existing fishing port, as well as the construction of a new port of a basin area and a quay wall for vessels to moor and offload. The second phase of the project, which will commence in 2019, will entail the construction of new facilities such as shed for the fish market, fishing net mending, and the construction of a new slipway for bigger vessels with a boat refurbishment area. To complement the multimodal transport system and support the movement of people and goods within the sub-region, the ministry commenced work on the Kumasi Airport Phase 2 project to upgrade it to a real international airport. The works include extension of the runway from the current 1,981 meters to 2,300 meters, construction of new terminal building to handle 1 million passengers per year, and other ancillary works. The project is expected to be 30% complete by the end of 2018. Implementation will continue in 2019. Mr. Speaker, work on Tamale Airport Phase 2 received regulatory approvals for the construction of a new terminal building and will serve the Sahelian region. In 2019, the contract agreement will be finalized and construction works commence. The project is expected to be 65% complete by the end of 2019. Finally, Mr. Speaker, government has given approval for the establishment of a home-based airline with private sector participation to provide regional and intercontinental services for efficient movement of people, goods, services, as well as to promote tourism. Strategic investors will be engaged, and the airline is expected to commence operations in 2019. Mr. Speaker, to address the inadequate health facilities that continue to bedevil our fellow Ghanaians, government has received parliamentary approval for a $50 million US loan to complete Phase 2 of the University of Ghana Medical School, which is awaiting the conclusion of a value for money audit. Government has converted the whole regional hospital to a teaching hospital. We have commenced the process for upgrading the Hohoe Municipal Hospital to a regional hospital. Government will construct a total of 15 CHIP compounds, 2 in Greater Accra, 5 in Brown and Hartford, 2 in Ashanti, and 3 in Easton. And will construct 1 district hospital and 5 polyclinics in Western region, and equip 4 selected facilities in the Eastern region. Mr. Speaker, structural work on the new 500-bed military hospital at Ofori near Kumasi is about 65% complete, and full completion expected in 2019. In 2019, work will also start on the 3rd phase of the 37 military hospital project in Accra. Mr. Speaker, to boost housing supply and strengthen coastal protection, government will continue to work on several projects, such as the Saglemi Housing Project, where 4,100 or 5,000 homes will be completed in 2019, and the Kopkos, Anomabo, and Ayanua Keta Coastal Protection Works, Government Affordable Housing Project at Asokore Mampong for 1,300 housing units is 90% complete. As announced in the 2018 budget statement, work has been completed for the start of the pilot phase of the Mortgage and Housing Finance Market Scheme in November 2018. An amount of 40 million Ghana cedis has been released to the pilot phase, which will leverage additional private sector funds, 40 million from pensions, insurance, collective investment schemes through selected commercial banks. Mr. Speaker, a vibrant mortgage and housing finance ecosystem is key to social equity, economic development, and job creation. To scale up this initiative in 2019, government had committed to, Mr. Speaker, a billion CD Ghana mortgage and housing finance fund, which will be seeded with a minimum of 100 million Ghana cedis every fiscal year over the next 5 years. This effort will support private sector in expanding access to housing and deepen the local mortgage and construction finance market. The focus on fixing the financial system to support home ownership by a large segment of the populace is critical in government's effort to enter into a social compact with labor. Government, through State Housing Company, is looking to partner with various private sector developers to deliver housing across the country in every region and to complete all the uncompleted housing projects across the country. By encouraging the delivery of more homes under a variety of demand-driven initiatives, such as lower mortgage interest rates, rent-to-own schemes, dedicated income deductions for home ownership, and lowering the cost of home delivery, the Ministry of Works and Housing seeks to create a housing market that works for everyone, meeting the diverse housing needs of our country. Mr. Speaker, every citizen deserves to aspire for a roof over their head, and this government seeks to make this possible. Mr. Speaker, a total of 50 units of townhouses and 24 units of flats at Roman Ridge will be completed by the end of the year for public and civil servants under the redevelopment program. Starting in 2019 and over the medium term, about 200,000 housing units of various types will commence in all the regional capitals and participating constituencies in the country towards reducing the national housing deficit of over 1.7 million homes. To mitigate accommodation and housing deficit in the military, the government continued the SNIT housing projects at various garrisons in Accra, Temaho, Tamale, and Sekondi, Takoradi, and expects completion in 2019. The first phase of the 4 16-unit housing projects under the Barracks Regeneration Project will be completed and commissioned before the end of this year, and the second phase will commence in 2019. The second phase of the Security Agency's housing projects, comprising 368 housing units for the Ghana Navy, has been completed. The phase 3, comprising 320 housing units for the Ghana Police Service, has commenced and will continue in 2019. Mr. Speaker, in connecting Ghana through digitization and communication, government established 400 telephony sites to provide voice signals to 2,000 unserved communities to bridge the digital divide and ensure nationwide coverage by 2020. In 2019, government will deploy an additional 600 telephony sites to provide voice signals to 1,800 communities where coverage is limited or non-existent due to the inability of existing licensed operators to expand their network. The construction of the ICT Technology Park to provide multi-tenant infrastructure at Dawa through a PPP arrangement is ongoing and is expected to be completed in 2019. Mr. Speaker, we'll put more resources behind fintech in the ensuing year. Mr. Speaker, a concessionaire has been selected to assume responsibility of ECG's core business of power distribution and shall be required to invest $500 million in the network to improve efficiency and reduce commercial and technical losses. Mr. Speaker, the rural electrification program will be continued in 2019 using conductors and cables from local manufacturing companies. The move is to support the local manufacturing industry and boost employment. Government undertakes to complete the extension of electricity to the whole country and is committed to work with local banks and entrepreneurs that are ready to invest in the energy sector. Mr. Speaker, in line with our belief in investing in human capital, education is about to witness the largest capital expenditure in the sector for any single year in the last 50 years. In the last 50 years. Government will continue to ensure that these investments lead to an increase in resources for the educational sector. Government has presented to Parliament a proposal to secure up to $1.5 billion long-term financing for GET Fund on the back of a portion of VAT receivables as prescribed in Act 581, and which will be issued in 3 tranches of $500 million each. This will be used for critical education infrastructure, especially to complete the numerous uncompleted buildings in secondary and tertiary institutions around the country. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, government will commence work to upgrade 10 technical universities, polytechnics, and 13 technical institutes with modern equipment and also train selected lecturers of these institutions. To further develop the TVET subsector, we will commence the construction of 20 state-of-the-art TVET centers, as well as upgrade and retool 34 vocational training institutes in 2019. In addition, 2 new centers in foundry and machining will be constructed. Mr. Speaker, as part of its efforts to promote science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM education across all levels, government will in 2019 roll out the B-STEM program in 7,000 basic schools across the country. Construct 10 STEM centers, initiate the development of a knowledge cloud to make educational materials content accessible to all, and provide multimedia laboratories as well as internet connectivity to cover many schools. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, government also cut short for the construction of a multi-purpose youth resource centers in every region of the country. Construction work has started at all the sites and at various levels of completion. These centers will provide space for youth engagement, recreation, and centers of learning and sports. Mr. Speaker, under the Zongo Development Fund, 5 recreational parks were completed for use at Bolga, Salaga, Yeji, Tafukumasi, and Akimoda. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the several projects in agriculture, warehouses, dams and dugouts, supply of ambulances, building of water and sanitation facilities and markets, in 2019, IPEP, through the development authorities, will go into full drive in the supply and delivery of constituency-specific infrastructure, including drainage systems, footbridge, renovation of schools, community town centers, reshaping of roads, among others. The National Cathedral. Mr. Speaker, on March 6, 2017, the 60th year of our independence, the President cut the sword for the construction of the National Christian Cathedral for the country. That will provide a space for national events, Christian nature. A national monument, the cathedral, will house impressive chapels and baptistry, 5,000-seat main auditorium, expandable to 15,000 people for national events and celebrations. It will include, among others, a Grand Central Hall, a music hall, and will house Africa's first ever Bible Museum and documentation center. The National Cathedral project will also bequeath to the country a gracious national park for all Ghanaians, bring new skills, technology, and jobs to the country, and will act as a beacon to national, regional, and international spiritual tourists. Mr. Speaker, the state is facilitating this process by providing the land, the secretariat, and some seed money for the preparatory phase. Mr. Speaker, the President is determined that the building of the National Cathedral would not put undue financial burden on the state. He has therefore proposed a partnership between the state and the Ghanaian Christian community, both at home and in the diaspora. The formal launch of this national fundraising campaign is slated for December 28, 2018 in Ghana and February 2019 in the US. The National Cathedral Partnership Framework operationalizes and indeed is a practical expression of the social partnership envisaged to foster participatory development of country as our collective goal. This, we hope, Mr. Speaker, will be counted as righteousness for the nation. Mr. Speaker, the Creative Arts Industry Bill is now in Parliament for deliberation and passage into law. The Creative Arts Fund is incorporated in the bill to ensure the economic viability of the creative arts sector in the economy. In addition, government in 2019 will pursue the passing of a legislative instrument to establish a secretariat for the National Film Authority and will also facilitate the construction of an ultra-modern film production studio to attract international film community. Mr. Speaker, government has also identified and acquired 200 acres of land to support a village for the creative arts. To commemorate the 400 years of slavery, a delegation led by His Excellency the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo went to declare 2019 as the year of return in September this year. The Ghana Tourism Authority is leading this campaign that will see a great number of African diaspora from the United States of America, the Caribbean, and the United Kingdom return to Ghana on a pilgrimage to promote heritage tourism in 2019. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, the government will support the development authorities to deliver the following projects. The Northern Development Zone will benefit from the construction of 20 irrigation dams to support all year-round farming, 15 warehouses for storage of grains and cereals, 200 culverts, rehabilitation of 200 kilometers of farm roads, 170 tricycles to transport share nuts, 85 new 6-unit classrooms, blocks of ancillary facilities, renovation of 114 classroom blocks, and provision of 162 units of motor tricycle ambulances and 28 rural centers. The Middle Belt Development Zone will also implement the following projects: construction of 30 small town water systems, 300 culverts, establishment of 33 industrial enclaves, 30 small town markets, 15 small irrigation dams, 15 warehouses, irrigation of 300 kilometers of farm access roads, establishment of 18 agriculture and business incubation centers, and 30 community development centers. In the Coastal Development Zone, the following projects will also be delivered: the establishment of 10 agriculture centers, 4 fish and shrimp farm enclaves, provision of street light, construction of 10 small town water systems, 100 culverts, and provision of 200,000 school furniture. In addition, the 4 regions, Volta, Greater Accra, Central, Western region within the zone, will benefit from the construction of 20 teachers' quarters each, 20 small bridges, 5 drainage systems, 4 waste recycling plants, 10 rural health centers, and rehabilitation of 300 kilometers of farm roads and feeder roads.